It is considered to be one of the most terrifying mechanics in the history of Magic the Gathering. Although it was kind of unknown upon its release, several decks quickly started using cards that had this mechanic, and as time went by, any deck that used a card with this mechanic in it essentially adopted it as its namesake. This mechanic is either loved or hated by everybody in the Magic the Gathering community. The mechanic I am speaking of course, is Dredge. Go! Anyway, decks that run this mechanic have been around since the days of Extended. Decks built around Dredge are primarily based around graveyards due to the way the mechanic works. Rather than drawing a card like normal, you can return a card with Dredge in your graveyard to your hand by putting a certain amount of cards from the top of your library into your graveyard, depending on how expensive the cost is. This might seem like a real drawback, but when you realize that every card relies on the graveyard or is in some way, shape, or form synergistic with the graveyard, then it essentially becomes one titanic advantage. Because every card in the graveyard has Dredge. Okay, seriously, that's getting really annoying. I'm just going to call it the dreaded mechanic because that's basically what several people in the Magic community think of it as. So it's perfect. A long time ago, a player in my Magic community told me, "You are either prepared to deal with the dreaded mechanic, or you are not. A card like Leyline of the Void or Rest in Peace will hose this deck nearly entirely." Unless they have some way to get rid of it, which they could. But it really does hurt them a lot. However, not everyone's main deck or sideboard holds graveyard hate, and that's where we have to kind of elaborate a little bit more. You have to keep in mind, their graveyard is their hand. So essentially, dredging a Golgari Grave Troll up from a graveyard is the equivalent of drawing 6 cards. Like, that's totally fair. Plus, it's also important to note that some decks in Vintage and even Legacy don't even need lands to function properly. In these formats, the most core centerpiece of the deck is Bridge from Below, and it also synergizes with some sort of sack outlet, using cards like Dread Return and paying its flashback cost and getting back a big creature. So in addition to having a big creature, you can also have a horde of zombies thanks to all the Bridge from Belows in your graveyard. So essentially for each creature you sacrifice, you get at least like 2 to 3 creatures on top of that. Ouch! To stop these tokens and Reanimator, I'm going to recommend Hallowed Moonlight again, just because this card is the shit. If you're playing against a horde of zombies and a deck that uses absolutely no lands, how about that Ghostly Person? Try attacking me now. Just to get this out of the way, hand attack absolutely stinks in this matchup. You don't want to be discarding cards to a player who wants to discard cards. If you do play black, my recommendation, if you're playing a format like Legacy, is Virulent Plague, because it will make their Bridge from Below useless. Another thing that's really good against Bridge from Below is having a creature with a sack outlet, or is able to sacrifice itself for some reason. An example of this would be the classic Mog Fanatic. Although it doesn't see a whole lot of play these days, it's actually a really, really good card to get rid of your opponent's Bridge from Below when it is in your graveyard. Keep in mind, you can use any creature that can sack itself or sack other creatures. If the game goes a bit later, you might want to consider having a Scavenging Ooze around. Although it's not really great early game because you can't eat up everything. But keep in mind, Scavenging Ooze can eat Bridge from Below. You just won't make it bigger. If you know you go up against the Reanimator version of Dredge, another great card Green has is Ground Seal. Try getting out your Iona now. You won't be able to, by the way. Going on to Modern now. Modern is a little bit different from Legacy because they don't have access to cards like Dread Return. Dread Return is actually banned. They're likely going to have a bunch of Vengevines and several little creatures that can reanimate themselves so that they can cast them over and over and over again, as much as they need to get board presence to counter a small horde of self-reanimating creatures like Gravecrawler and a horde of Vengevines. My personal go-to card is Anger of the Gods, considering it kills everything with 3 or less toughness, which include Vengevines and Gravecrawlers and almost everything in between. This is absolutely excellent. If you can last a little bit later, another great card would be either Hallowed Burial or Terminus. Although these board wipes are a little bit clunky, they do cost 5+ mana. They are excellent against a horde of Vengevines, because you won't have to worry about them getting them back from the graveyard. If you play blue, counterspells kind of don't really work too well in Legacy, simply because the deck is mainly going to be using abilities and not spells. I suppose you could try Stifle a little bit, or try to counter or save a spell for their Dread return, but seriously, with the amount of times they get Bridge from Below triggers, it's going to be kind of difficult to counter them all, so I wouldn't recommend taking that path. If you play Modern, one spell I kind of like to have around, or would probably recommend at least trying, is Syncopate. And I know Syncopate's not the most playable counterspell in Modern, there are definitely better options, but considering that big spells like Vengevine or like Lotless Troll are pretty fearsome creatures, it can be nice to get rid of it and not worry about anything coming back. Another thing you may want to keep in mind while playing against Dredge is you may actually want to be on the draw more, and I know that might sound kind of weird, but believe it or not, a lot of Dredge decks actually want to be on the draw because they want to fill their hand up to 8 cards and then discard down to 7 and get a Dredger in the graveyard if they don't have a discard outlet or some way to get stuff in there. Just keep this in mind whenever you play against a deck that runs the dreaded mechanic. So now that you know what to do, and you know you're going to be playing up against a deck that runs the dreaded mechanic in your next sanctioned event, feel free to follow these strategies, and if you play your cards right, you will slay this beast. Again, I hope this video has been of some help to you. If there's a deck that you are having trouble defeating at your local FNM or sanctioned event, feel free to let me know about it in the comment section below, and I will make an episode about how to beat that deck. Thank you all again so much for watching. Don't forget to like and smash that subscribe button, and also don't let Dredge come between you and your friends. My name is Rio Spectre, and I'll see you next time.